Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say welcome and thank you again on behalf of AWFS, AWI, and Skills USA. I can't express how much we appreciate you volunteering your time to help out with this student competition. I think we're all here for the same reason, and that is, obviously we believe in the industry and we believe in education and we want to support students in any way that we can. And these competitions through Skills USA are one of the great ways of industry being able to chip in and help out the next generation of woodworkers. So it does mean a lot to us that you're here and you're volunteering your time, especially on a weekend. So again, can't thank you enough. This video will hopefully give you a bit of an overview about the whole process, what the day looks like, what your responsibilities are, and everybody else. But there will be opportunity for you to reach out to coordinators, ask us questions, and hopefully have a great, smooth day. So thank you again.
So let's talk about the timeline on the day of. Now it's going to look a little bit different for both of the different competitions, so we're going to go over each one individually. So for introductory woodworking, and again, this is usually a shorter competition, a little bit less time, and we also stagger both competitions from each other. So on the day of, which is February 7th, 2026, is Saturday, students should be arriving and set up at their schools at 8 a.m. Because again, even though we're going to be on Zoom, they are competing in person at their respective schools. So students, advisors, proctors should already be there, set up their cameras, log into the Zoom, and the proctors will start actually giving out the project plans. Now, from 8 to 8:30 a.m., and again, this is Pacific time, California time, um, we're going to have an orientation for students that lasts about half an hour. So just to go over the basics, go over a little bit about the competition itself and the project plans. At 8:30 is when students are actually going to start competing. So that's when they really get started. And they'll have from 8:30 until 11 a.m., so 2.5 hours to actually build that project before you, the judge in the room, calls time. Now, when you call time, you just want to make sure that you're actually keeping an eye out for any kids that are running over because we do have a penalty for that if they're using time that they are not supposed to have. And at that point, from 11 till about 12:30, that's when judges are going to have time with proctors to actually help go over the finished products and help you judge. And they're going to be really your eyes and ears and moving around with the camera to make sure that you're getting all the information you need to score the kids. So let's move on to cabinet making. Now, cabinet making usually is a more advanced topic. You get a little bit more time, and we also stagger them because we do an orientation for them as well. So for the day of, again, February 7th, but instead of 8 a.m., this is 9:30 a.m. So that's when judges should be there. That's when students should be arriving on site to get started and be ready to go. From 9:30 to 10 is when we're going to have an orientation for these students. At 10 a.m. is when the contest starts, and then they will have 3 hours from 10 till 1 p.m. to actually build their projects. And then at 1 p.m., again, just like you would do for the intro woodworking, whichever judge is in that room is going to stop time and keep track of anyone that runs over. And then we're going to have about an hour to an hour and a half for judging, or again, the proctors are going to be your eyes and ears to help you go about judging and scoring all the kids. Okay, so let's talk about how the Zoom gets organized and what each of your roles are as judges, what you're going to be responsible for. So overall, there are going to be kids from 6 different regions across California. And depending on the numbers of how many kids are participating from each region, we try to group them up into 3 different Zoom rooms. Now, that's 3 Zoom rooms for introductory woodworking and also 3 Zoom rooms for cabinet making. And so that's really kind of one room for each judge because we have 3 judges for intro woodworking and 3 judges for cabinet making. Now, depending on the year, who's in what room will vary. So I'm just going to go over in general the different judge roles, what you'll be doing, what that looks like. So we have 2 sets of judges. 1, 2, and 3 are for introductory woodworking, and 4, 5, and 6 are for cabinet making. And you're doing the same things, you're just doing them for two different competitions, different sets of kids. Now, I have this broken down into what's happening during the competition time and what's happening afterwards. And you can see that during the competition time, you all are doing the same thing. You're all keeping an eye on the same stuff. And that's really because we want to make sure that you are in the room the entire time. So when the kids first arrive, as best as you can, keep an eye on their clothing, make sure it's safe, hair is tied back, everything is appropriate, nothing branded, all that kind of stuff. Machine skills, you're actually going to be looking and seeing as they're using the tools to make their project. Again, are they using them correctly? Are they using them safely? And again, all of that ties back into safety, and you're going to be monitoring that. And if you see something, if you see them doing something unsafe, obviously mark that down, but please tell them and tell the proctor immediately. We really don't want anybody getting hurt, so it's very, very important. Now, if they continue to do these issues, my recommendation is keep a tally mark of how many times you notice a safety issue, and that'll help influence the score that the student gets. But again, always say something. Always make sure that students are using the equipment safely. And then right before, or I should say right as the time ends for the competition, you'll just be keeping an eye on the whole Zoom and seeing if any kids continue to work after you the judge, have told them that they all need to stop working, because again, we have a violation for that. Now, afterwards, this is where you're going to be doing different things depending on which judge role you are. So, the reason why we do this is because these last things, well, especially these two, the percentage of the product completed and the product quality, are pretty subjective, right? So everyone might have a slightly different opinion on these kinds of things, and we want to make sure that we have consistency. So the idea here is, let's talk about Judge One. You are intro to woodworking, competition has already happened, and now you're going to stay in the room and you're going to work with the proctor to actually take a few measurements of the finished pieces just to kind of spot check, right? Did the kids actually get their measurements on correctly? Now, we don't have time to go and measure every single thing, and that's okay. We're just going to look at a few key measurements, which we'll go over later. Now, once you are finished with that, you are going to rotate into the room that Judge 2 was in, and you're going to do the exact same thing for those kids. You're going to do all the measurements, right? Did they do everything correctly? And then once you're done with this room, you're going to move on to the last room that Judge 3 was in. And again, you're still doing measurement skills. So Judge 1, you're doing measurement skills for everybody. Judge 2, same idea, except you're looking at how much of the product was actually completed, right? If they finished at 100%, and if they didn't, what percentage and what score would you give them? So you're going to stick in the room that you've been in this whole time. You're going to do this for all the kids in that room, and then when you're done, you're going to rotate in to Judge Three's room. And again, same thing. How much is completed? Just is what you're focusing on after the competition is over. And then once you're done in this room, you're going to move over to that first room that Judge 1 is in. And again, how much percent of the product is completed. So you're doing that for literally every kid in the competition. Lastly, Judge 3, same idea, except you are looking at the product quality, the finished product quality. You're going to do that for the room that you're in. You're going to look at all those finished submissions or partially finished. And then once you're done with this room, you're going to move over to Judge One's room and you're going to look at their finished product quality. And when you're done, you're going to move on to Judge Two's room and do that same thing. So again, everybody's doing the same deal during the competition, but afterwards, you each have different roles, but you're doing that for absolutely every kid in your competition. So 1, 2, and 3, every kid in introductory woodworking. For cabinet making, 4, 5, and 6, same exact thing, except for the cabinet making students. And you're only rotating after the contest is completed.
So as you see on your screen, this is a summary of the scoring guidelines. It'll be more in depth in a minute. You can see on the left side is all the things that you should be looking at as a judge during the contest, and on the right side in red after the contest. So at the beginning, checking if students have a proctor and that proctor is an impartial person. looking at their clothing, making sure that that is appropriate and safe. And then while they're working, safety and then their machine skills. Again, very, very important about safety. We don't want to allow students to do anything unsafe. So as you see something, please communicate that with the student, with the proctor, and notate it for juror judging purposes later. And then on the right side, you can see we want to look at time violations. So at the very end, when you call time, are students still working when they shouldn't be? Mark that down. Their measurement skills, so the proctor helping you actually measure certain key um, parts of the finished product, and then what percentage of the product is completed, and then the quality of it. And we're going to go into more detail next.
So here you see the scoring rubric for all students for cabinet making and introductory woodworking. And we're going to go through these step by step. So above in green are positive points that students can earn, and below in blue are the penalties. So one thing I'll mention is that all Skills USA competitions, not just woodworking, are out of 1,000 points. So if these all in green, if you add these up, that'll be 1,000. Now this item won the first 100 points is an online test. This is judged directly by Skills USA, and you don't have to worry about it. So you can ignore this. I'm just putting it here so you can see the total point values. Now, during the competition, you're going to really be focusing as a judge on items 2 and 3 to give points. But I want to take this sequentially. So at the very beginning, when students are starting the competition, the first thing you're really going to look at is down here in the penalties, which is clothing. So students should be wearing closed-toed shoes, hair up, sleeves rolled up, safety goggles on, all that kind of stuff. If they're wearing any kind of branded clothing, it should just say Skills USA. And as a penalty, if they're dressed appropriately, they don't get any points. But if something is off, it's all or nothing. You take away 50 points. So that's just a quick first thing you should do, again, as best as you can with video that you're shown by the students. So then while the students are actually competing, this is where you're going to be looking at items 2 and 3, machine skills and safety. They're worth 200 points each. So machine skills is going to be you paying attention to how are the students actually using the tools, the equipment. Are they demonstrating that they know how to use them? And again, not even just from a safety perspective, but also from technique. Are they showing you that if they're example in cabinet making, they understand appropriately how to use a table saw with good technique, or a compound miter saw, or a drill press, or whatever it is. So, as a judge, you're going to be, for the most part, sticking to your breakout room that you're assigned with the somewhere between 50 and 30 kids that are in that room. And that'll just depend on the regions and the year and how many kids have signed up. And so, over the course of, probably a couple hours, you'll really get to see all these students work with all these tools. And really, you want to start from the top down, right? The best case is everyone knows what they're doing and they know how to use all those machines. And only if you really notice that a student is really not proficient in using something, that's when you want to start deducting. But you want to start high and work your way down. Now, for safety, for item number 3, this again, it's the same way. You want to start at the top, work your way down. Well, hopefully they all are safe and there's no deductions or anything like that. But if you do notice a student doing something unsafe, they have their safety goggles off, they're not using a push stick for the table saw, something like that. Um, what I recommend you do is you put a little tally mark in your notes for yourself. And that way you can just very quickly keep track of how many times have you noticed this student do something. You can also write an actual little sentence or something in the general notes for later. And we would like you to do that. Just in case a parent or a teacher or something asks later, why did my student get XYZ deduction? We want to be able to communicate that. And again, it's only 10 points for each safety violation, so hopefully that shouldn't be too many. And one important thing I do want to point out is you don't want to just notice that a student is doing something unsafe, take the points off, and then that's it. You want to say something, you want to communicate to the proctor, you want to communicate to the student, let them know what they did so that they don't do it again. Again, we do not want an accident. We don't want any injuries. So don't let them, just make these mistakes over and over again. Say something. If they keep making those mistakes, that's another problem, and then we might have to talk to that kid specifically. Um, but just keep track, tally it up, and make notes. Now, as we get to the end of the competition, the first thing that you're going to do as a judge is you're going to call time. So again, for the room that you've been in for the whole time the students are working, you're going to let them know that time is up and they really should stop working immediately. We don't want anyone to have an unfair advantage and they keep working for an extra minute or few minutes. So you should be able to kind of see throughout the Zoom room who's still moving, who's not. And if someone is still moving, you'll just record that as a time violation and they get this 50-point deduction. And again, it's all or nothing. If they continue to work, even if you've told them to stop, let's say a couple times, again, please note that in your general notes so we know that for later. Um, and then this is where at the end of the competition, the really in-depth judging comes into play with items 4, 5, and 6. Now, as a judge, you're only going to be responsible for one of these. And you're going to have 3 judges total for your competition. So let's say it's cabinet making and you're Judge A. And Judge A is going to do measurement skills. Now, you've been in the same Zoom room this whole time, but for consistency, to make sure that all students are getting scored equally in measurement skills, you are actually going to be rotating around to the different Zoom breakout rooms and talking to the proctors and getting them to actually take some key measurements for you so that you can score every single student. So while you may only have, let's say, 25 students in your breakout room that you've been in the whole time, but you're going to be scoring this measurement skills for all 70 students, let's say. And again, this is where you're going to work with the proctor to actually grab some key measurements that we will let you know which ones to look for. And this is for 200 points. So that's Judge A, what you're going to be doing and looking for. Now, while Judge A is doing that, Judge B for cabinet making is going to be looking at how much of the product is completed. And so again, same idea. You've been in the same Zoom breakout room the whole time, and you are going to score those students on this, but then you're going to rotate to the other rooms and score all 70 kids and how much of the product did they complete. And again, that's for consistency. And this is somewhat subjective, right? But that is why we want to have one person doing all of this. And again, that's 150 points. And then the last person, Judge C, the third judge for cabinet making, will actually be looking at the quality of the finished product. So this is, are the joints flush? Are the miters clean? Is there blowout? The profile's looking correct? All those little things. Again, as someone in the industry, you can recognize quality work versus not. And again, it won't just be for the kids that were in your breakout room. It'll be for all the cabinet making students, and you'll rotate around. And then the one last thing, I hadn't mentioned it before because one of the coordinators will be doing this. We will be going around and checking to make sure that every student has a proctor. Now, you can have one proctor and multiple students, but we just need to make sure, one, at a bare minimum, that there's an adult in the room. If there's no adult in the room with the students, they should not be allowed to compete. It's not safe. But a proctor really should be not just an adult. It shouldn't be a teacher, or I shouldn't say, it shouldn't be their teacher, the woodshop teacher, shouldn't be a parent. It should be an impartial person, ideally someone with experience in woodworking that can be more eyes and ears like you, making sure students are staying safe. So you should absolutely speak to the proctors in your breakout room that you're in, get to know them. But don't worry about scoring this. The coordinators will be doing that for you. So again, that's the overview of everything that's going to be scored. And again, as a judge, you will only be responsible for items 2 and 3, clothing, time violation, and one of these 3 items, depending on which one you are assigned. So in order to keep track of scoring, and this is not the official scorecard that SkillsUSA uses, we've made this Google spreadsheet for everyone to use. And what you'll see here is at the top, you have these numbers. These are the student competitor numbers. It's anonymous, so we don't have names here. And you should be able to see which kid is which based on what's pinned to their shirt and in their name that they've titled themselves in the Zoom call. And then as you see on the left, we'll have three different judges for each competition. IW is for introductory woodworking, and then over here at the bottom, CM is for cabinet making. And each of the judges is going to have different responsibilities, some of which are happening during the competition, some of which happen at the end. And as you can see, it looks like Judge One is doing almost everything here, but that's not really the case. This is just Region One. So this is just a certain number of students in one of those Zoom breakout rooms. If we look at Region Two, this you can see is going to be a different judge is doing the majority of things. So the idea is you'll be sticking in the room that you're in with the same kids for really the entire competition time. And I'll look at this one as an example. Judge two is going to look at their machine skills and safety. That's happening during the competition. So you're not going to have to wander around to different rooms and monitor more kids. It's just going to be those kids in front of you. And then at the end, you're also going to look at the finished product and how much of it was completed. And of course, did they run over time at the end and in the beginning? Were they wearing appropriate clothing as best you can tell? And you can see Judge One and Judge Three are looking at different things, and these are just at the end, looking at the final product. So that's kind of the basic idea is you'll go in here, you'll fill in the score according to the rubric in each of these cells. At the bottom, there's some room for general notes. These can be positive or negative notes. Both are good, and this is only if the student or maybe the teacher requests at the end. So if you want to put something positive that you see, that's also really wonderful. If you're saying something like, oh, safety violation, I saw them, do this X number of times after repeated warning, you can put that there as well. And you just scroll sideways to find the correct student. Now, basically what happens here is after you fill this out, it'll automatically total up everything in this spreadsheet. You won't be able to edit this part. This is just for the coordinators to use. And then we will actually fill all of this stuff in for Skills USA because they have a very specific template and format that they use. And we don't want to get that messed up. So again, you'll have access to this spreadsheet. Each person is color coded. And again, whether that's introductory woodworking, and this is by region of California. And then here we have the same thing, but for cabinet making. And you'll be in one room for the majority of the time before at the end, you'll rotate into those other rooms so that, for example, Judge One, here's what you're doing in whatever room you're in. But then at the end, you're going to do measurement skills for all the kids in introductory woodworking. And that way we get some consistency. And that's really what's important. Going through the 2026 regional competition plan, starting with Introduction to Woodworking. So you will get a copy of this. It has multiple pages that students will get most of this. And as you can see, and I'll go through this in detail, there are going to be some blanks missing on the cut list. That's for them to fill out. And then we also have some blanks of what their stock should be and how they're going to actually draw out and lay out their cuts. And then in addition, there's going to be some things that they don't have, the key, right? So all these things in bold are the answers. And same thing here, these are the drawings of how everything gets cut out. So they'll get part of this, and you're going to get a copy of this with a couple little minor changes, which I'll explain. So as you can see for this intro woodworking, it's a soda can tote. That's the project for them this year. You can see from the drawing here that it's solid wood material. And you can see there's a detail here. We have a couple of different elevations, a plan view, and then of course the isometric view, so you can get a sense of what that looks like. There's some instructions here at the top, right, reminding them to cut and pre-drill, pilot holes, countersink, whether to use glue, how long the screws are, that kind of thing. And I just want to highlight a few different things for you to keep in mind and look at as they're building. So obviously we have overall dimensions here, and we'll talk a little bit more about as judges if you're doing the measurement skills category, what that'll look like. But I just want to point out you can see here where we've got screw holes on the outside. You can see how these pieces fit together with half laps. And then on the next page here we have the really detailed views with all the measurements. So we have a vertical section, partial, longitudinal section, and then plan section from above. So you can see from the diagram here we have those screws that were coming in from different sides. Same thing over here, we have screws coming in, one from the bottom, and again here from the sides. They're going to be cutting out a handhold, and it is important that they cut it out with the right dimensions up here and the length of it being 5 inches, those kinds of things. So again, pretty simple project. Everything here is drawn to scale. And then again, now this is something with the cut list. Now we don't score them on this for the regional competition. It's something that we score for the in-person state competition. So we want to expose them to this now, and get them to get some practice. And it's just good practice professionally. So they'll have to be putting in quantities here, the width for the bottom, and then the length for all of these. So they're going to be filling these out. Again, in terms of judging, don't stress about it. Don't worry about it. We just want the kids to practice doing this. It's not scored for this one. And then same thing here, they're going to draw on this paper when they get it from their proctor, how their cuts should be laid out. But again, this isn't something that we're going to score. It's something that's scored in the state competition, but not here in the regional competition. And this is for you all, so you can see which of these are the correct numbers. Now, one thing I do want to mention about scoring when it comes to measurement skills is obviously we can't take the time to measure every single thing. It would take forever. So the proctor is going to help you. They're going to help measure a few different key measurements on this project. But usually we try to do maybe 4 or 5 or 6, not too many. So it won't take a crazy amount of time to go through and score each kid. And on the version that I'm going to be emailing to you, those will be boxed. So they'll have boxes around them. So for example, this 5 inches being the length of the opening for that handle for the tote, that's going to be one of those one of those measurements that you're going to have. So in yours, you just keep an eye out for any of these numbers that have a box around it, and that's what you'll be talking to the proctor about to make sure that they are measuring everything that you need them to measure. All right, and that's it for this one. Take a look at the 2026 Regional Cabinet Making Competition Project. So you can see down here it says cabinet making, and the kids are going to be making a spice rack unit, a wall-mounted spice rack unit. So as you can see from the isometric view, this is overall what it should look like. You can see some details here where there's some screw holes. We have our plan view, some elevations, some general instructions here at the top reminding them to cut and pre-drill, countersink, how long the screws should be, if they're using glue or not, and what their dimension tolerances should be. So you can see also from these drawings that these are all solid wood, so nothing composite. And we'll go through this whole thing in detail, but just to give you a very brief overview, and you're going to get a copy of this, you can see that then there's a much more detailed set of drawings on the second page and the third page for all the different parts. Here we have a cut list, and I'm just going to point out that there's a lot of blanks here, and the quantities, the thickness, the width, the length. So this is something that we do not score for the regional competition. It is something that is scored in the state competition. And that's one of the reasons why we want them to do it here is for practice and exposure. So you as a judge don't have to stress about did they fill this out correctly. It's just for them to fill in and to do and to practice because this is professional practice to have a cut list. And then on the next page here, they have their stock, and this is where they're going to draw in where they're going to make all their cuts to really try to optimize their material use. And again, this is something that is not scored for the regional competition, so you don't need to worry about it, but the students will still do it because they are going to get scored on it in the state in-person competition. And then, of course, there's a key. So the kids won't get this, but this will be attached in your copy in case you need it. With all the bolds is the stuff that was blank that's filled in, and the key for the optimized cut lines for everything. And then one last detail, and this is has to do with that top piece and the notch that's cut out of it. So let me go back to the beginning and let's kind of look at it in depth together. So over here on this first page, you're going to get some overall dimensions, width, depth, height, but we really need those much more detailed views to go through. Just pointing out the curve on here. And again, curve is going to be, we're not looking for perfection. We're not looking for it to be, to some exact radius dimension. That's too challenging to do in this short amount of time. But obviously, it should be smooth, and that's one of the things that you can have the proctor check for when whichever judge is doing the finished build quality. There's a door here in front that swings out, but there's two fixed vertical stiles on the other side of it, so the door is right here. All right, so let's take a look. So in this vertical section, you can see where we have some screws. This is what would go into the wall and into the wall right here, and we have ones coming up from below right here. Oh, I'm sorry, this isn't the wall, this is the door. So these are screwing into the stiles, I apologize. We have a shelf here, and we have a little piece underneath that shelf for support. And over here we have screws coming in on the side when we look at our longitudinal section. And again, you can see all the dimensions here that the students should be following. And you can see what's 3/4 inch stock or something bigger. And again, just want to point out this top one. See, the radius isn't really defined. It's really more about what this overall top dimension is and what is this smaller dimension, 3/4. All right, and let's look over here. So here we have our top view, our plan section. So again, we have screws coming in, screws coming in. We have some pocket screws right here, or toe-nailed in. On the outside, we have this detail. You can see where screws are coming in and how this fits in to that notch right here on the edge. Another plan section. Again, all the same kind of thing, all this level of detail. Now, the only thing I think you really need to pay attention to as a judge, especially if you're doing the measurement skills, is, obviously we can't have the proctor measure every single measurement for every kid. It would take way too long. So instead, what we do is we pick out like 5 or 6 different measurements across, all these different sections, and that's what you're going to have the proctor do the measuring for. So I'm going to give you a copy of this that has some of these with a box around them, and those are the ones that you're actually going to have the proctor measure for you, and you're going to look at and you're going to judge. Yeah, and that's it.
So again, we just want to thank you so much for volunteering to participate in this year of Skills USA California's regional competitions. This is a big thing. It's a big thing for the students. It's a big thing for us, and hopefully it's a big thing for you to participate in. We've tried our best to go over all the details with you here today in this video. And if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to our coordinators. Thank you so much, and we will see you on the day of.